Okay, so let's do some exercise on what we learned so far. So this is an exercise about read it, right? So we have seen this before. This is the try and catch block that we have used to basically try to take care of this IO exception that may come from a scanner. If you look at this code, the first line is we will create a file based on the argument. And then there are two scanners. So we added this scanner. Sorry, not added this scanner, but added this scanner in here. The second scanner basically is from the keyboard. So the idea in here is if the file name I got from the argument is bad, then we'll ask user to give us a file that is good. And we'll force user to do it by putting the user in this while loop. So you have input. This is what we'll try to get from the file. So the first thing we did is to link this source file to this scanner. And you may have an IO exception. And if this is the exception we have, you have this catch block that will print out this error message and also try to do something here. The idea here is we'll ask user to give us a file name. So the question is, what do we have to insert in here such that after we finish the catch block, it is guaranteed, sorry, not after we finish the catch block, after we finish the while block. So after we are done with this part, it is guaranteed that we have correctly linked a source file to the input scanner. Then we won't see any null pointer exceptions after catch. So what should I put in here? You can pause the video and think about it. Alright, so let's look at the answer here. The first thing we do is, well, we already printed out the error message. So most likely you can see a file doesn't exist or permission, whatever the error message is. Then you may want to say, well, let's print out, so please enter a file name, enter a name, right? So enter a file name, system.out.println, and then you want to read in a string, right? So the way you can read in a string is like user input dot next. This will read in a string, and you can directly create a file with it. I think we already have a file, like source file equals new file with that string as the file name. Right, so the idea is the user will give us something in here, then we'll come back to while, right? Come back to while. If input is null, which it should be, because in the beginning there is a problem, so input is null, you print out this error message, you kind of updated the object the source file is pointing to. So the condition will be true in here. Then you try again. You try to say, can I link the scanner to the new source file? If this is true, then you are good, because if this is good, then you don't execute catch again. You are nearing the end of while, you come back, the condition will be false because input won't be null anymore. You'll continue, right? If this is false again, basically you are going to execute catch again. So the idea in here is you're going to get stuck in this try catch block until you give the correct file name, so our code can continue, right? So this is one application of using try and catch. Okay. Here's another example. You can have multiple catch blocks with a single try. So for example, if inside this my method you have a try block, what the try block can do is can give you an IO exception or runtime exception. Okay, so for IO exception, we want to print out the error message but not to quit. For runtime exception, we want to print our error message and then just use system.x is 0. Okay, so you have two blocks, IO exception, this block, and then the other block, catch exception. Keep in mind about the relationship in here. Exception is the parent of IO exception. Okay, so given this, in what order do you think I need to list block X and block Y? You can pause the video now. Okay, let's think about the solution. Well, the way that catch block is executed is if there's an exception thrown out, whether IO exception or null pointer exception, then it's going to go to the first catch. Do I have a match? If there's a match, then that catch block is executed. The remaining catch blocks are skipped. If the first one doesn't work, then you try the second one. So it's more like a if-else-if kind of matching. Given this, so if I put this block Y first, because it's going to catch exception, and this exception includes any kind of exception. So if I put Y first, you will never get a chance to match this IO exception from X. So the way is, you always put more specific catch blocks in the front. You put something like this block Y in the very end. So the answer would be A. So you put X first and then Y, because the matching is done from the first block to the last block. You want to have the most specific exceptions listed in the front. Okay. Another exercise. Okay. So we are trying to again use try and catch to do something, to basically allow our code to terminate gracefully. Okay. The idea is gracefully. It is not just terminate, but take care of things before we terminate the program. For example, if you have two strings, S1, S2, okay, and then you create two files from them, assuming temp is good, blah is not so good, and then you try to build two scanners from those two files. You have a catch in here that will catch IO exception. In fact, this is the only exception you can expect from the try block. So you print out the error message, and then this statement is something that we haven't seen before. Throw E. It means I try to take care of it, so I'll print out the error message, but I don't know what else to do. So this throw E basically is linked over there. Okay. So we are trying to say, I print out the error message, then throw E. That's why in this method you also have this throws IO exception. Okay, so this is also allowed. You try to take care of it, and in the end you say, well, let my caller to further take care of this exception. Okay. But what do you think the biggest concern about this code? You can pause the video. Alright, so let's look at the answer. The answer in here is, in fact, there is a problem. Because assuming if S1 is good, S2 is bad, basically this will work. This will give me IO exception, right? So I print out the error message, and then I throw it to my caller. But since you're looking at files in Java or in any language, if you try to create a file object from that file, in general, once you are done with it, you are supposed to close it, or else there may be unexpected consequences. For example, no other processes can access that file, or you may see basically if you are trying to write to a file, you may not be able to put the content into that file. So in general, we want to close the files that you have successfully opened. In other words, in here, F1 needs to be closed. The question is, can I simply do this? F1.close. Sorry, not F1.close. Input1.close. So can I just insert these two lines? Input1.close, input2.close. Will this work? I'll close them. The answer is not necessarily, because if you have those two things in there, for example, input2 really is null at this time. You can't call close. You're going to have a null pointer exception. Your code will crash. So you can't simply close them. So the last thing about exception handling in Java is it gives you this finally block. What this finally block does is, no matter what happens, whether you have an exception thrown or not, whether a catch is executed or not, finally this segment is always executed. Okay? So the idea here is if everything works okay, then catch will be skipped, but finally will still run. If one of them is bad, for example, if this is bad, this is good, then catch will execute before you throw E. So before this one finally will execute. Finally will execute. Okay. So finally will always run whether you have an exception or not. And this is the good part, because in here you can basically check if one of them is null or not. If they are not null, you close them. Right? So this is kind of the idea. You have try, catch, and finally. And this throws exception is linked to this throw E, just like before. Right? So to summarize, what do we usually do with exceptions? If a code is supposed to run, and all of a sudden you might experience something, okay? So you can use try and catch block to try to salvage the situation and see, well, is it possible that I can take care of the problem and continue, right? If you can't do it, then you can say, well, maybe I should give this exception to my caller, and hopefully my caller can do it. If no caller can do it, they can keep throwing to their caller. In the end, main will try to take care of it, right? That means crash. But try and catch block will allow you to at least quit gracefully in most of the time. Okay. So this is the video we have for Thursday. Okay. And I still have a few exercises that we'll do when return in week 10, Tuesday. All right. Thank you.